Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel where the biblical backgrounds matter. Before we dive back into Exodus chapter 4, I think it's important to go back to some of the background. Now, some of the early dates that are suggested for the Exodus are about 1446 BC, where Amenophis II was king between 1450 and 1425 BC, or another early date would be about 1440 BC, and then another early date would be about 1437 BC, all of which would have made Amenophis II the reigning pharaoh of Egypt. A later date would be suggested about 1350 BC, which would have Tutankhamun 1361 to about 1352 BC. Another later date that is suggested is about 1290 BC, which would make Ramesses II the pharaoh of Egypt around that time, from 1304 to about 1237 BC. Other early dates would be about 1280 BC and 1275 BC and 1225 BC. Hebrew language and writing. Hebrew is a Semitic language and is related to many languages that were used in the ancient Near East, in the ancient world. Unlike Akkadian cuneiform, it is alphabetic rather than syllable, i.e., each sign is a letter rather than a syllable. It is written from right to left using only consonants, whereas here in America we go left to right with our alphabet. Their alphabet was a system of marks above and below the consonants, which developed during the first millennium AD to fill in for the vowels and thus preserve the pronunciation of what was at that time a dying language. We had the Egyptian instruction, wisdom literature offered as instruction from a father to his son to prepare him for life and often for rule. There are general biblical periods, historical periods, and archaeological periods. Like, for example, the Mesopotamian historical period puts the early dynastic period between 2900 and 2350 BC. The dynasty of Agade is 2350 to about 2200 BC. The Egyptian period of the Old Kingdom was about 2700 to 2150 BC. Archaeological periods, you had the Middle Bronze Age, the first one, from 2200 to about 2000 BC. The Middle Bronze Age, the second one, from about 2000 to 1550 BC. In the historical periods, there's one called the third period, about 2100 to 2000 BC. Now, getting back to Exodus, You'll remember that Joseph had died in the land of Egypt. And then the Pharaoh at that time had died as well. A new Pharaoh had come into his place, didn't know who Joseph was, and he was afraid of the Israelites growing in number, so he oppressed them with taskmasters, and the more that they oppressed them, the more that the Israelites grew and multiplied. Moses was born. This particular Pharaoh had passed a law that all Jewish boys or Israelite boys were to be killed. But the Israelite women feared God more than they feared Pharaoh. So they prayed to God and they stood up to that law. This Pharaoh passed another law that all Egyptian boys were to be drowned in the Nile River. When Moses was born, his mother protected him and hid him out in the reeds in a basket, and she sent him down the Nile River. Pharaoh's daughter came out with Miriam, the sister of Moses, and she rescued him and adopted him as her own. And then at the suggestion of Miriam, the sister of Moses, their mother, Moses' mother, was brought in to nurse him. You'll remember that by the time Moses had reached adulthood, he chose to stand with his own people. He saw an Egyptian beating an Israelite. He looked one way and he looked the other way, and when he didn't see anybody watching him, he killed the Egyptian. The very next day, he caught two Jews fighting with each other, and he tried to be the peacemaker between them, and they reminded him that he killed the Egyptian and asked him if he was going to try to kill one of them. And therefore, he fled the scenes of Egypt, and he went to a place called Midian. There, he learned how to be a shepherd. He was the shepherd of his father-in-law's flocks. His father-in-law was Jethro. And then at the burning bush, he got the call from God to go back to the land of Egypt to tell Pharaoh to let his people go. Moses would be the instrument by which God would deliver the Israelites from Egyptian bondage and slavery. And when Moses asked God, "Who shall I say has sent me?" God says, "I am who I am. Therefore you shall tell them that the great I am has sent me." Here in chapter 4, Moses basically comes up with an excuse. Exodus 4:1, "Then Moses answered and said, But suppose they will not believe me or listen to my voice. Suppose they say the Lord has not appeared to you. So the Lord said to him, What is that in your hand? He said, A rod. And he said, Cast it on the ground. So he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. Then the Lord said to Moses, Reach out your hand and take it by the tail. And he reached out his hand and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand, that they may believe that the Lord God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. This was God talking to Moses. giving him instructions, giving him a command, and giving him assurance that the Israelites would have the assurance of knowing that God had sent him. Verse 6, furthermore the Lord said to him, now put your hand in your bosom. And he put his hand in his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous like snow. And he said, put your hand in your bosom again. So he put his hand in his bosom again, and drew it out of his bosom, and behold, it was restored like his other flesh. This was God showing his power to Moses, showing him that he's the one in control. Verse 8, then it will be, if they do not believe you, nor heed the message of the first sign, that they may believe the message of the latter sign. And it shall be, if they do not believe even these two signs, or listen to your voice, that you shall take water from the river, and pour it on the dry land. The water which you take from the river will become blood on the dry land. Then Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. This was an excuse that Moses gave to God. God became angry with this excuse from Moses. Verse 11, so the Lord said to Moses, who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Well, we know that that's a definite yes. The Lord has made us. He formed us in the womb, and he knew us. Verse 12, now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth, and teach you what you shall say. Here's where Moses comes up with another excuse. Verse 13, but he said, O my Lord, please send by the hand of whomever else you may send. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, is not Aaron the Levite your brother? Aaron later on would become the first Levitical priest, and then his sons after him. He says, I know that he can speak well. This was God talking to Moses again. And look, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. Now you shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and I will teach you what you shall do. So he shall be your spokesman to the people, and he himself shall be as a mouth for you, and you shall be to him as God. And you shall take this rod in your hand, with which you shall do the signs. God was not saying that Moses would be God, that he would become God, but he was saying that he would do the work of God, and that by the power of God he would show forth the signs and the wonders to the land of Egypt. And Moses would be his spokesman, basically his prophet. Now for the last half of the chapter, Moses actually goes into Egypt. Verse 18. So Moses went and returned to Jethro his father-in-law and said to him, Please let me go and return to my brethren who are in Egypt and see whether they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, Go in peace. Now the Lord said to Moses in Midian, Go, return to Egypt, for all the men who sought your life are dead. Meaning that the Egyptians who had sought the life of Moses were dead. Basically the captains of Pharaoh. Let's read that again. So Moses went and returned to Jethro his father-in-law and said to him, Please let me go and return to my brethren who are in Egypt and see whether they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, Go in peace. Now the Lord said to Moses in Midian, Go return to Egypt, for all the men who sought your life are dead. Then in verse 20, Then Moses took his wife and his sons and set them on a donkey, and he returned to the land of Egypt. The donkey for the Israelites symbolized peace when one was riding it. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand. And the Lord said to Moses, When you go back to Egypt, see that you do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in your hand. But I will harden his heart, so that he will not let the people go. Ultimately, God is the one in control. He was the one that hardened the heart of Pharaoh because he promised it to Moses. Verse 22, Then you shall say to Pharaoh, Thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I say to you, Let my son go, that he may serve me. Remember that Israel was used by God as the nation that brought forth Jesus Christ, Yeshua, the Messiah. So therefore, the nation of Israel was chosen to be God's peculiar people. God would set the law to the nation of Israel. Let's read verse 23 again. So I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, indeed I will kill your son, your firstborn. Remember that Egypt was a polytheistic nation. They believed in many gods. They often worshipped, for example, the Nile River as a god because it was their source of water. Had 10 different gods, pagan idols. So the one true God sent forth 10 different plagues to destroy each pagan god and to pass his judgment. Verse 24, And it came to pass on the way at the encampment that the Lord met him and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at Moses' feet, and said, Surely you are a husband of blood to me. So he let him go. Then she said, You are a husband of blood because of the circumcision. Remember back to Genesis. God set apart Abraham to make him the father of many nations. Abraham became the father of Isaac, who was the promised son. Isaac became the father of Esau and Jacob. Esau became the nation of Egypt, not Egypt. Esau became the nation of Edom, which became synonymous with Mount Seir. Jacob became the nation of Israel. And as a sign of that covenant promise, God gave the circumcision to the Jews, which was symbolic of them fitting in with their own society, them being the chosen ones of God. Verse 27 to 31. And the Lord said to Aaron, Go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he went in and met him on the mountain of God and kissed him. So Moses told Aaron all the works of the Lord who had sent him, and all the signs which he had commanded him. Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the children of Israel, and Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses. Then he did the signs in the sight of the people. So the people believed, and when they heard that the Lord had visited the children of Israel, and that he had looked on their affliction, then they bowed their heads and worshipped. The Israelites were assured that God had visited them in their affliction. He said so in the previous chapter, that he had seen the affliction of his people, and he sent Moses as basically a deliverer, which would be also a foreshadowing of the Messiah, which is Jesus Christ, because he would deliver all true believers in him from their sins, from the power of their sins, and from the penalty of their sins. So Moses can be seen as a type of Christ. But we see here in the last verse of Exodus chapter 4 that when the Israelites saw Moses and Aaron and they heard the message, they bowed down and worshiped God. But then later on, they looked back and thought that it was too tough for them to go forward. They thought that they were better off in the land of Egypt. And we'll see that in later chapters. But until next time, may God bless you, and remember that biblical backgrounds matter. Leave all comments and questions in the comment section below. And if this video was any help to you at all, remember to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family.